the Blast from Our Past Network.
Hey everyone, co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, Podcasting After Dark would not be possible. If you would like to help the show grow, please consider signing up at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. You can also support the show by purchasing one of our awesome t-shirt designs on our merch store at podcastingafterdark.com, or by picking up a copy of 7 Winters Alone by David Irons on paperback, hardback, or Kindle. Just search for 7 Winters Alone on Amazon or click on the link in the show notes. A free way to help out is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those reviews are huge for us and really helps get the show in front of new listeners. Again, thank you all so much for the love and support you've given us over these past few years. It really means the world to us.
Welcome to our Patreon exclusive interview series for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Tonight's interview is with the star of The Last Starfighter, Night of the Comet, and Weekend at Bernie's, actor Catherine Mary Stewart.
Catherine Mary Stewart, thank you so much for being on Podcasting After Dark.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here.
We are huge fans of you and your career.
Mm-hmm.
My co-host Corey and I, we on our show, we break down movies scene by scene, and we covered Night of the Comet, and specifically Night of the Comet. One of our many comments we made throughout was how powerful your character was and how great your character was, and how obviously you and Kelly Maroney had such a great chemistry in the film. But
thank you.
But overall, like, it's not just Night of the Comet. It's not just The Last Starfighter, but it's your whole filmography, which, you know, dates back obviously to the Apple, which I want to talk about a little bit in this.
Speaking of horror movies.
Well, it all depends, right? But my gosh, you are sincerely an icon, and I mean that in the most sincere way. And to have you on our show is a really big deal. So thank you again for doing this.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
How's the world treating you these days with, I mean, a lot of people think we're out of this pandemic, but I kind of think we're still in it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to jump the gun a little. I mean, I'm still a little wary because of, well, look what's happening in the rest of the world. I mean, mask mandates are coming back in different places, and there's all sorts of variants, and so many people are not taking the vaccination, and even if you do take the vaccination, you can still get it. You just don't get as sick as you would or might if you didn't. So I think people are a little quick in the uptake in terms of everything's back to normal. I tend to veer on the more cautious side, put it that way.
You know,
it is nice that there's a little more freedom and you can kind of go out and social distance and all that stuff. But yeah, I think we should stay vigilant to a certain degree. But yeah, I mean, it was a fine year. Honestly, my life was basically what it usually is, except when I travel. I mean, my husband and I just sort of sit in our 2-room apartment well, it's more than 2 rooms, but in New York. And actually I got a ton done, you know, because everything else had slowed down. My writing partner and I worked very, very, very hard on a script, doing the rewrites on a script. And we kind of jump-started getting that moving forward. It's been optioned up in Canada. So now that things are loosening up a little bit, it's really driving forward, but we're prepared. We're very prepared. So I spent a lot of time writing. And also so one of the things that I really want to get into in the future, on top of the acting thing, is directing and producing. stuff. And I have several projects for that that I was able to really focus on also. So it was good. I mean, I did miss traveling because I love traveling. I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles. I live in New York most of the time, but I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles. So it was a bit of a drag not going out there, but then there was nothing going on anyway. So I'm in North Carolina, and yeah, I the last couple of months have been sort of chaotic, frankly. There was a film festival in Los Angeles for Night of the Comet.
Yeah.
Zeitgeist Film Festival. The theme was LA Apocalypse, so they sort of featured Night of the Comet. So that was really fun. And then from there, I spent another 10 days in LA, just running around, and flew out here from there a couple of weeks ago. But I'm telling you, things are opening up so fast. I feel like here I am, we're at a beach, and I'm just like, I feel like I haven't had a chance to really relax and enjoy the beach, you
feel free to take the camera outside and put your toes in the sand and
take us with you.
How's that Zach Brown song go? I got my toes in the sand and cold beer in my hand, life is good today, or something like that.
That sounds very good. I had an audition, like, you put yourself on tape. So I have this little setup. You can see my backdrop here.
Yep.
For self-taping. And I did one this morning. I did one like 2 days ago. And I have this podcast, and then I have another podcast coming. So it's just like, everything's opening and everybody's just like clamoring to get stuff made. But it's good. It's good. I just want to put my toes in the sand and have a beer.
well, this is dating all of us, I'm sure, a little bit, but there was a Who's the Boss episode back in the day with Tony Danza, and he was trying to, Angela, I think their power went out in the house or something, and Tony's like, "Oh, yo, Angela, you gotta visualize like you're in Hawaii right now, and your toes are in the water and it's warm," and she's like, "I can feel it, Tony. I can feel it," or whatever. So visualize. Now we'll try to visualize.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, it's literally a stone's throw away from me.
Go.
So I could actually, when I have a moment, I'm gonna wash my face and put on a bathing suit and step outside.
Fantastic. Well, it's funny. Appropriate that you brought up. You're at the Zeitgeist Film Festival for LA Apocalypse, and
right.
There was a time not that long ago that parts of LA looked like Night of the Comet, I'd say about a year ago. So your film in many ways is a little prophetic, I think. And
yeah, it's interesting. There's been a few instances where it was sort of like the scenario of Night of the Comet, not only with the streets just, bare, no people running around, but also during fires and things where the whole sky sort of turns red, and there's a lot of smoke and all that other stuff. So yeah, every year or so there's this commentary about Night of the Comet. Night of the Comet always comes up in my feed. So yeah, it's a funny movie, how that happens.
It's a movie that's really stood the test of time. And when we were revisiting it for the show, man, some of the shots you guys got in downtown LA with everything empty like that, there's no CGI back then. That was all just in camera, right timing. I'm sure early mornings on Sunday when downtown LA is dead and everything, but now that's always going to be there and preserved in that movie, and it's just amazing. It's absolutely an amazing thing to see, and it's such a fun movie too.
Thank you. Yeah, that whole situation could never possibly happen again because they're really building downtown LA with huge residential apartment buildings and things. And back in the early 80s, there was very little residential stuff going on there. There were a lot of banks and hotels. So it was sort of a hub for business meetings and bank stuff. But when we shot around Christmas as well. So I think it was sort of a combination of early mornings, Christmas time, that literally the streets were empty. There was no trick to it at all. We didn't even have, a lot of movies, they have policemen stopping traffic, at intersections so that they don't go through. None of that. We didn't have any of that. It was what you saw was authentically what it was like. And at the time, we didn't really think anything of it. It's just like, wow. We didn't even think anything of it because that's the way downtown LA was. But in retrospect, it's just like, wow. Because without CGI or a multi-million-dollar, budget that has a whole police force out there shutting everything down, you couldn't do it.
No. Mm-mm.
No, and LA really plays a pivotal role in that film. And both Corey and I,
for sure.
I'm in Santa Monica. Corey's now up in Oregon, but has lived in LA as well. And I don't know, I'm fascinated with old LA, specifically 80s LA. I think it's like kind of like 70s New York, where it's never going to look that way ever again. And it's such a perfect time capsule of what was. Other than the fashions coming back in.
Yeah, it's true. The 80s fashion's huge.
Oh my gosh. Oh my Lord. It's so weird because as these fashion cycles go by, it's like it's always devastating when the fashion changes, especially for a woman. I think it's more obviously, reflects more on women. And I remember when, high-waisted pants were all of a sudden down on your waist somewhere. And I was like, ugh, so uncomfortable. And all of a sudden my belts that cinched like at my waist weren't big enough for my hips and all that. It's such a pain in the butt. It's such a money-making thing for fashion people.
Totally.
But I don't mind the higher waists coming and you're starting to see some more shoulders and things like that.
No.
But it's funny because
yeah, I saw that the shoulder pads are coming back.
Yeah, there's kind of like fancy dancy sharp ones at the moment. I'm sure it'll just all go. Hopefully it won't do complete deep dive into the 80s. Although I have to say at the time, I loved it. The 80s were so much fun for me. I mean, yeah, LA will never look the same, but it was a wonderful place to live. It was fun, it was upbeat, it was positive, it was colorful, the big hair, the big shoulders. And for me, it was fun because I started out as a dancer and I really do have a dancer's body, which means skinny, basically I compare it to a little boy's body. And so when they had these fashions that kind of exaggerated, shoulders and then cinched in the waist with big, thick belts, and it gave me a shape that I'd never had before. Yeah. So I loved that. And I loved the big hair. I really relished in all that stuff. I love the crazy makeup. But it's funny, I've been watching the Friday the 13th series. And I just watched 7 or I just started 7, excuse me, where Terry Kaiser from Weekend at Bernie's, he's in it. Yep. So he is so good. Oh, I love him so much. But wow, the fashions are just from one, which was 1980 to this one, which is 1988, I think. Yep. Wow, the fashions are getting more and more extreme, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, we really looked like that, didn't we? It's funny. It's funny.
Well, like, with Night of the Comet, you're, the shot of you on the motorcycle and everything with the shirt, and it's like your outfit and your hair and everything is all a part of the iconography of that film now, and it's just as iconic as anything else, and it is the fashion, and there's so much awesome fashion in that film. So yeah, it's really, it's fantastic. And I was in LA a couple years ago before I moved up here, and I was driving through North Hollywood and I just saw somebody walk on the street and they just looked 100% like they were out of the 80s. And I was like, that's awesome. And I'm like, and it doesn't even stand out. You feel contemporary now. It's really weird.
Oh man. Wow. Yeah.
My buddy turned me onto 70s fashion in the 90s. And so whereas when I was a kid of the 70s, having to wear clothes from thrift stores because we couldn't afford anything else, right? And so I'm wearing like
yeah.
my brother's old plaid bell-bottom pants in like 1983. And then now flash forward into the late 90s, and my buddy's taking me to like Iguana Imports or Iguana what's it, Iguana? I think it's on Ventura. Anyways,
Oh.
to buy vintage clothes, you know. And it's like $60 for a pair of pants that should have cost like 10 or something.
Of course.
Right.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I grew up in the 70s as well, and I had a clothing allowance, which was I think it was like, for me it felt like a lot of money, but I think it was like $20 a month.
Okay.
And so I used to go shopping and get where the cheapest places possible. And I remember buying jeans and things with giant flares on them for like, $10 or whatever. And I'm sure they'd be worth a lot of money now, but hopefully I'm old enough that I don't have to revert back to those fashions anymore. I can kind of maintain this sort of like, well, I'm old, so
Well, look, when I was in the 80s, when I was trying to peg my pants, right? That was a thing for a minute. Thank goodness it's like over.
Pegging your pants? What was that?
So like you take them in and you roll it up.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And now that skinny jeans, well, they're probably going out of fashion again, but I'm like, I really like these. These are really comfortable. I can stretch in these. I was gonna say though, probably dancing in bell bottoms was very challenging, but my wife's
I guess so.
My wife's a dancer as well, and she would agree with you about the whole dancer's body, quote unquote, right? But is that how did you get involved in acting just in general? Like was dancing the gateway to acting?
As it turns out, it was. I've always been a performer to a certain degree. I come from a very animated, big personality kind of family. And not that anybody else was in show business. My dad was a professor at the university, but just watching him lecture, it was like, I get it where I get that from, because he was very animated in his descriptions of things. And my mother got me into, so I come from this background of academia. I have 2 older brothers that are super smart, and my mother is, a physiologist. My dad's a biologist. And then I was like, I hate school. So my mother had the wherewithal to kind of try to introduce me and encourage me to do things outside of academia, I guess. And so that involved, ballet when I was very young, which I hated because of the discipline. It was just like so boring to me. There was painting. She got me into gymnastics. She got I did a little acting thing for a while there, and then finally, and I was just fed up, when I was about 14, she kind of tricked me into going to this dance class, and it was a jazz dance class, sort of modern jazz, and I was so mad, and I thought, fine, I'll do this one class, but then I'm never coming back. And it just clicked for me completely unexpectedly. It was just, I was almost, I tucked myself in the very back of the class, and I was like, I'm just going to get through this thing, go home, and I don't know, eat popcorn. I don't know. But it really clicked. And just halfway through the class, the instructor had me come to the front because I picked it up really quickly. Anyway, long story short, I loved it. I stuck with it. I stuck with this instructor, this teacher. She became my mentor. We established a dance company in Canada. I was dancing professionally by 16.
Amazing.
And so when I was 18, I decided, instead of going to university or college, I would pursue the dance. And I ended up going to London, England, and studying at a performance art school called London Studio Center, where there was a lot of dance, but also there was acting and singing and every kind of performing art you can think of. It really it created a wonderful foundation for me. So when and so by chance I went to this dance audition. My mentor that I mentioned earlier, when I told her I was going to London, she says, take advantage of any situation that you possibly can, any kind of audition, anything, get that kind of experience under your belt. So I happened to run into a couple of friends who were in my dance class, and they'd heard about this dance audition for a movie. So I heard my mentor voice in my ear. So I thought, oh, I'll follow them. And I ended up in this cattle call audition with millions of dancers. And the director spotted me and he pulled me out of the group and he asked me if I could act and had me read for the lead role. And I ended up getting the lead role in this movie.
Are we talking about The Apple?
That's The Apple.
I mean,
futuristic rock musical.
Well, I'm more fascinated with the fact that you've done a lot of musical oriented films. Like, I'm a really big fan of the scenes from The Gold Mine, right?
Oh, talk about 80s.
I know
stuff I'm wearing in that, and like, woohoo!
Oh, it's so great. Girl. It's so, and then later on, what was it, last year you did your film, the holiday rock movie, right?
Rock and Roll Christmas.
Yeah. And so is there a connection here with your I'm a musician as well, and I did a school of rock thing with kindergartners for many years, and very fun. And I'm very musically inclined in that way. And I love performance, and I love the idea of, I love rock music, original rock music in movies. And so so The Apple, I think, is very much a guilty pleasure, but is there a connection?
It has some awesome music in it. There's some I don't know, iffy lyrics in there somewhere, but the music itself was written and by some really incredibly talented people.
Yeah, no doubt. Are you drawn to films that are like have this kind of musical vibe to them?
Absolutely. There's no question. I've always loved music and singing. I was one of those kids that would come home after school and put on, an album, and just because my parents would be at work and my brothers were doing whatever they were doing, I would just sit in my living room with the record player blasting, singing at the top of my lungs. I've always just really loved music and singing. I've been around a lot of musicians in my day. I love it. I have to say, I love just the whole music genre, whatever, anything to do with music.
Well, that film, Scenes from a Gold Mine, has a tremendous cast as well, right? Steve Railsback and Cameron Dye and
yes, it does.
Joey Pants.
Joe Pantoliano. Yeah. Joey Pants, such a great guy. A
friend of mine did a movie with Joey Pants a couple years ago, and just said that it was like, such a character, right?
He is. He's a lovely, lovely guy. I love him. He was fun to work with. I mentioned Bobby Woods, who is a music producer. He produced the music on this as well, and I think he's worked with Madonna a bunch and all that other stuff. Really terrifically talented people. Yeah, very talented people involved with this movie. And Joey Pants. I just saw him not too long ago, just before the pandemic, everything shut down. He was doing a play in New York, and I have a really close friend who happens to live in New York, who was the script supervisor on that movie. And she found out that he was doing this play. So we all bought tickets and went to see the play.
Nice.
It was right on the cusp of the pandemic. And in fact, the director himself had become sick. And at the time, they weren't sure what it was. And I think he is fine, but he was really, really sick. So they sort of struggled through the production without the director, which is a drag, but it was really so neat to see him again.
Yeah, so many movies that this is the thing. Like, we could list off all the movies that we love of these people that are very well known, or we can bring up Scenes from a Gold Mine. You know?
Yeah.
By the way, Cameron Dye is a tremendous musician in his own right as well.
He is wonderful. He and I are still very good friends. Lance Guest, who is in The Last Starfighter,
Yeah, of
as
course,
Alex,
yeah.
We've stayed very, very close. And
Yep.
Cameron Dye rents an apartment in Lance's house. So
Oh.
whenever so I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. Cam, yeah, he's
That's a weird connect. That's a cool connection.
Yeah, well, he was also in The Last Starfighter, believe it or not.
He was, and in a smaller role.
Right.
I mean, honestly, in many ways, I think he's a very underrated actor. But I love that you and Lance have kept this relationship going. Clearly, you know, fanboys were like, "Oh my gosh, I love your connection you guys have in the movie," and still it's a real thing. You have this deep friendship for well over 20, 30 years, right?
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy. And yes, I go to, I have this joke where when I spend any time in LA, I usually try to find the cheapest place I can because I'll be there for a little while, and I don't spend that much money on food, you know. And
Understandable.
so he and his wife will invite me over for just like this awesome dinner a few times, and he's really into wine, so I get to really indulge when I'm in Los Angeles with Lance, and I usually see Cam while I'm there too because he lives just downstairs. So it's like
Larry
awesome.
on Three's Company, you know.
yeah, exactly. He's wonderful, and he spent a few years in New York too, doing a play on Broadway. So I mean, so we've really, been able to stay in touch, which is wonderful. And now, there's so much talk about doing a sequel to The Last Starfighter, so we're talking about that a lot. It's been so terrific being able to stay in touch with some of these people that I worked with so long ago. I mean, at conventions, for instance, you run in like Nick Castle, the director, who is also, in Halloween. He's whatever. I'm not very good at horror movies, but I'm going to be involved with this little Friday the 13th thing, so I've been catching up. That's why I mentioned that. But
how so? Can you dig a little deeper into that? How so? Are you going to be involved in the Friday the 13th franchise?
Friday the 13th, 2024. No, no, it's just a little side project that a friend of mine is doing. So that. As I mentioned before, I'm getting into directing a little more, and he asked me if I would direct some stuff for it. So that's
cool. That's really cool.
Researching. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's great. Now, you mentioned obviously Terry Kaiser, Weekend at Bernie's. I've noticed lately that it's kind of been coming back to the foreground, and people are really going back and appreciating what he did in that role and comparing it to like Charlie Chaplin. And you watch it and you're like, it's incredible. But obviously he could not have pulled it off without everybody else in the cast, working with him and all that kind of stuff. But what we're left with is a movie that holds up, and we've never seen another Weekend at Bernie's. Like, nothing's like that. There's no movie like that. Not even Weekend at Bernie's 2, but like Weekend at Bernie's is such a magical movie. And Terry Kaiser is unbelievable in it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real sign of a true talented actor. He's dead for most of the thing, and yet you can't take your eyes off him. How do you do something like that? It really is amazing. I mean, he was wonderful in the movie, and and not an easy role at all. I mean, you don't really learn how to play dead in acting school, so he had to create this character. He really had to create a dead character that was interesting, and boy, he was the one who could do it. I mean, like I said, I just started watching Friday the 13th 7, and you just see all the subtleties that he brings to his character that makes him so you just can't take your eyes off him when he's on camera. So talented. And Weekend at Bernie's has become kind of like I don't know, every sitcom seems to have a joke about Weekend at Bernie's one way or the other, which is it's wonderful. I mean, I love it. And yeah, it's just, it really does stand out. I think it is unique. Will Ferrell has a kind of, I kind of called it that sort of sophomoric sense of humor, where it's just like anything goes kind of thing. And the closest I can think of, I think, is like Will Ferrell. But it still isn't I don't know. It is different. I agree with you. I haven't seen anything like it before. I think I even heard something about them remaking it.
No.
I just don't see how you could do that, but you have such an amazing career, like we were saying, but just like these three movies that we were touching on right now, I mean, they're so iconic, so mainstream iconic, anyone would know it, but they're so different. Night of the Comet is so different from Last Starfighter, and it's so different from Weekend at Bernie's. It's so nice to see you in just such like these different projects and these different stories, and yet they're still turn out to be, they hold up and stand the test of time. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with you and all your other actors in the film and the love that are put into these films. It's just, but it's interesting that they're so different from one another,
Yeah. And all in the same kind of era. That's one thing that, looking back at my career, I'm really pleased about and grateful for, that I've been able to play so many different kinds of characters.
Right.
A lot of actors feel like there's this whole thing going around where, you had to fit into this specific mold and that's how you sold yourself. You don't want to veer outside. Who are you and what are they going to hire you for? And I was like, that just seems so absolutely counter to what we are supposed to be doing as actors. As actors, you create new characters and you explore. I mean, ultimately, what you bring to the character is in you somewhere, but it's so much fun digging it up, and using your life experience and using the different parts of your personality and all that other stuff. So I know I've really, that's one of the things that really appealed to me about Night at the Comet was I have this sort of look like the girl next door kind of a look. Or had. Now I'm grandma next door.
No,
not at all.
But Reggie in the Comet was really this tough chick. I mean, she could look after herself. And combined with the fact that the movie was very much tongue in cheek as well, which is so much fun. Another sort of reason that made it a unique movie, but that's another thing. But yeah, this tough, independent woman who could look after herself in an apocalypse. And I've said this before, but I really feel like she was more who I am. I'm much more independent, and I was never really girly. I liked hanging out with guys a lot more than I liked hanging out with girls. That kind of a thing. So it was super fun for me to shoot Night of the Comet.
Nice.
Well, I think about Michael Bowen in Night of the Comet. Oh. And then I think about Cameron Dye in Goldmine, and like, wait, but those guys were at odds in Valley Girl. And
yeah.
You choose one. Would you have gone with the Valley kid or the kid from the West Side?
Are you asking me in Valley Girl?
Sure. Yeah.
For me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I might go for the West Side guy.
You gotta go with the guy from Venice.
Right? Exactly. Venice or Santa Monica.
Right. Well, I was gonna say too, yeah, you touch upon being this tough chick, right? And then in Starfighter, you're very much a tough chick. You stand up for yourself, and I love that. It's such a, I think that's another reason why these movies stand the test of time, is because there's a level of positivity and role models there where so much is lacking. I think we're becoming more aware of that now with proper representation in a balance, right? But those are great examples of two strong female characters for young people to look up to. I'm not just talking about girls. I'm also talking about young boys to go, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be like. You know, it's not supposed to be pink and blue and that's it. Like I love that about your dynamic range. It's great.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, yeah, it's so cliche, you know. Well, it's slowly changing, but it has up to this time been like a boys club, first of all. And so most movies have boys mentality. And so it's all about tough guys and, you know, and the girl. I mean, I've done tons of movies where I was the only female in the whole thing. Because you got to have that element in there, but it is nice to, and when we were shooting Night of the Comet, we weren't sitting around going, oh, can you believe this is a female driven movie with these girls that can look out for themselves? We just liked the script. I mean, the script was so much fun. Tom Everhart's script, where he literally interviewed teenage girls about what they would do if there was an apocalypse. And to his shock and surprise, they were like, excellent. You mean our parents aren't here? We can do whatever we want.
Right.
And that is another unique twist in movies, you know, because everybody's always screaming and yelling and they're all gonna die. And in our, you know, and zombies are slowly killing off everybody. And in our case, it was like, yeah, bam, you know, to the zombie. And then it's like, let's go shopping. Hey, the stores are open. So, and I agree with you. I think that the characters in Last Starfighter and Night of the Comet are identifiable for that aged audience. You know, they're finally seeing characters that are like them.
Yeah.
They're just ordinary people in extraordinary situations. And I feel like so many, you know, sci-fi action-packed movies are just unattainable characters for the audience. It's like, it's exciting watching them do all this stuff, but you know, you have to be a movie star to do that or something like that. And with Reggie and Sam, it's just like, there's a couple of goofy girls. And in The Last Starfighter, particularly with Lance's character, because he really drives the movie, but he's just a kid from the trailer park. Vernon Washington's line, you know, you got to grab on with both hands and hold tight or whatever.
I love that.
Paraphrasing, but I know it really was what the movie was about. You know, take advantage of extraordinary situations if they come along. The audience could relate to his frustration, his going through this pivotal time in his life where he's got to make these life decisions and he can't even get into college, the college that he wants to. And then this happens. So it creates a sense of possibility. And same with Night of the Comet.
I showed my wife all three of the movies we've talked about, you know, pretty much so far, and she's a big horror fan, but she I guess she kind of missed Night of the Comet when she was younger, and she liked all of them, but she walked away and she was like, you know, wow, I really wish I saw Night of the Comet when I was like, you know, just younger and everything. And it's everything you said. It's not so much in your face. It's not trying to be, you know, it just is, and I think that's what works about it. It just your characters are just strong characters, and it's not like they're like, oh, let's set out and try to do this. It is. And you know, she was very impressed by that, and it was like, she was like, wow, this is awesome. And then of course you start seeing like, we wouldn't have had Buffy the Vampire Slayer without Night of the Comet. Like all these strong female characters that came in the 90s because the creators were so enamored. And I think Night of the Comet was a huge influence on a lot of these awesome female characters that came, you know? Yeah,
apparently that theory has it that Joss Whedon, you know, took Sam's character and created Buffy, which is great.
I didn't know that.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
That makes sense, I guess.
So yeah, I mean, sure. I feel very good about these little movies, and it's astonishing how long they've hung in there, and it just seems to be this momentum of it. These things are getting more and more popular. It's just it's kind of mind-boggling, because you do a movie and it comes out and then it goes, and you especially at that time we were all sort of distracted by working a lot and things like that. And then 20 years goes by and all of a sudden everybody thinks you're the greatest thing in the world for doing Night of the Comet. It's like, what? Night of the Comet?
Well, I will tell you,
I
I will tell you personally, you never know what movie's going to hit you, right? What movie's going to stay with you. And so many of your films have stayed with me throughout the years. So World Gone Wild, because I was a huge Michael Pare fan, and
I love that movie. And Bruce Dern, oh my God.
It's a great cast.
Incredible. Adam Ant.
Yes.
Yeah. Pare is just like, I have to work opposite him. Well, okay. I mean, oh my God. He was like just the most beautiful male specimen, and very, very nice guy. And
Michael Pare or Adam Ant?
Like that. Oh,
Michael
Pare.
Oh yeah.
He Adam Ant just scared me.
Yeah.
He plays such an evil character in that. I became really good friends with Anthony James, who plays that cannibal. He's kind of like
who is very creepy, by the way, like his look, from back in the day in the Clint Eastwood westerns and whatnot.
That's right. Yeah, he had that look, and he wrote a book called Acting My Face.
Ooh.
Yeah. One of the most lovely human beings you'll ever meet. He passed away sadly recently. A couple of years ago, but yeah, we became really good friends. He's also an incredible poet and artist. I have a couple of his paintings and poems, and I have his book. Yeah, he's a really, really good guy.
Remind us of the book title again.
It's called Acting My Face.
I have to check that out for sure.
Yeah,
and
it's
also
so interesting.
Not to mention, also passed away, Julius Carey from who's great in it too. Sho'nuff from Last Dragon, and
yeah, I loved his outfit. That bodysuit that he had to wear. Poor guy.
See, this is the thing. That movie, I think, needs to be re-seen. Like everything's getting re-released, right? And a documentary or a commentary or whatever. Michael Pare. Michael Pare's got a great story too of how he became how he got his start in Hollywood. And but I was a huge fan of his too, and I was like, oh, he's such a cool dude, and I wanted to be him when I was a kid, and I idealized him. But that movie often gets overlooked, and it's a really fun film.
I think it's great. I just like it's sort of a unique story / situation. It covers so much ground, like cults, and I mean it could be you could make that movie today with some of the weird political shit that goes on in it. Yeah, no, I loved it. Plus, I loved being kind of a desert rat, I'm a real desert dry person. And I had these, it was warm out there, but I wore these sort of drapey clothes that didn't get hot. And I had the coolest sort of, I want to say mucklucks, but that's not right. Leather kind of, probably Native American style or Mexican style leather boots that nothing, you could walk on anything and nothing would penetrate them. I loved those things. I was living vicariously through my characters. That's one of the best parts about being an actor, is you just get to pretend to be all these different kinds of people that you just aren't in real life. It's fantastic.
Well, you're drawing from your own personal experiences too, obviously, in playing these roles and things that you love, being a desert rat, like you said, and wearing Uggs before they were Uggs.
Yeah, kind of.
No, way better.
Uggs. Yeah, way better than Uggs.
There was a G.I. Joe. You remember the G.I. Joe cartoon back in the day, right? And there was a character. They always tokenized characters on that show, but Spirit, he was the Native American, right? And he had these cool boots like that too, the boots you're describing. And I wanted those so bad when I was a kid. I was like, I want to go to school and these cool, like
In those, right? They were thick leather with the silver button.
yeah.
They were the best. You could have worn those anywhere, in anything. You could wear them in the snow, rock climbing, desert, everything. It was there. I just loved them.
I love that. Well, and I love that movie holds such a warm place in your heart to this day.
It does. I mean, I ran into Bruce Dern maybe 5 years ago. He just done that movie. Is it Winter something? I forget the title of it. But it was screening at the Screen Actors Guild Theater in New York, and I went with my husband, and I went backstage afterwards to say hello to him. And Bruce Dern has never drank. He doesn't drink alcohol. He doesn't smoke. He used to be an incredible runner. So he's kind of a crazy person in a way, and he doesn't forget anything. They were interviewing him after the screening, and he would just go on and on and on with stories. Anyway, I went back and I thought, oh, he'll never remember me. He's like, oh, it was like it was yesterday.
That's
and
awesome.
He was remembering specific things about it. Yeah. He was great. He was a real champion of mine. He really was very, very supportive and kind to me.
Well, he's a legend too. And
he's a legend.
And don't disagree with what I'm about to say. You are too. I mean, I think you sincerely, and I mean that in the sense of like the longevity and like you said, the diversity of your roles. And it's fine if you play the same gangster in every single movie. It is what it is, but the fact that you have such a great roadmap of your life on screen, and we connect with so many of these characters. You brought up that you're watching the Friday the 13th movies, and I love that genre series too. I know Corey does, obviously, but they're so cliche, right? In so many of the roles, and it became kind of a parody in a sense, which is fine. It's all good. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, your roles, your female empowered roles, like, you talking about seeing Terry Kaiser on screen. I would see so many of these actors in these movies and I'm like, oh, I really love that guy. I really love him or her. And then they get killed by Jason. I'm like, no, they were supposed to live.
Yeah.
Can we flip the script?
That cracks me up. Yeah, that cracks me up about Friday the 13th. And again, I'm not a huge horror genre person. The problem with horror movies is they really scare me. So it's not like entertaining to me. It's just like, oh my God, I'm going to be scared. So for me, that's not fun. I'd rather cry or laugh or fall madly in love or something like that. It's kind of a joke. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of going in circles here, but I was watching one of the movies on my computer with my earphones in. My husband was like literally a few feet away from me, and all of a sudden, I think, and it's one of them, somebody drops down into the screen who's just been killed, drops down into frame, and I was like, I am the person in the theater that screams all the time during horror movies. But what cracks me up about Friday the 13th is that it's just like nonstop death.
Yes.
Death. It's like within the first 5 minutes, some poor kid is dead.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow. And then it just never stops. It's relentless. It's just
Totally.
like, bam, okay, you're dead. Now you're dead. Now you're dead. And one thing I feel like is I sort of get the idea, the motivation for all these murders in the first one, but then the motivation gets a little vague. It's just like, and now here's a horrible creature killing people for no reason, and never die, just doesn't die.
And it moves so far away from what it like started out as, like it's so far removed.
Yeah,
just don't set your movie in space, okay? Just don't set your movie in space. I know Corey's a fan, but I'm not.
Lordy. I know there's a Friday the 13th in space, right?
That's my favorite one. I love it. I love that one.
Oh my God.
It's so
I don't
dumb,
know if I'll
great.
get to that one. Yeah. That's the thing.
I hope you don't.
It's like the apple.
Right. Yeah, no.
it really does attract a weird audience, the Apple. Trust me, it's had screenings everywhere. I have to say, I've been to more screenings of the Apple with these just crazy fans. It's like Rocky Horror Picture Show, you know, they're all, some of them dress up, they all know the words. It's like a parody. Although when we were shooting it, it was not meant to be a parody.
No.
It was being taken very, very seriously, but whatever.
I think those movies, you mentioned Rocky Horror and obviously the Apple, and I think of like Phantom of the Paradise, like these kind of rock musical movies are real. And then I'll jump ahead to like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, right? And there is something that draws in. It's not just the musical audience. It's not just the punk audience. It's a little bit of everybody. So maybe that's why it appeals to so many people. Who knows?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Yeah,
I
Phantom
know,
of the Paradise is one of my favorite. I don't even think I've seen the movie, but I bought the album years and years ago. I love that album.
It's great. Paul Williams.
Yes, Paul Williams.
It's a classic.
I'll remember you forever. I used to know all the words. Can't believe the price you paid for love.
That's awesome.
That's so good.
That's our Phantom of the Paradise, in case you don't know.
No, that's perfect. I love it. Give you full credit for the remake. We'll put you in that, you know. So.
Okay, cool.
Well, again, they don't remake that movie, and I like the fact that Starfighter may get a sequel, not a remake, because we're not a fan of remakes per se, but like I said earlier, and you had brought it up, that the idea of Last Starfighter getting this rebirth, right? And I was listening to an interview with Seth Rogen, and he was talking about how he wanted to do a remake of Last Starfighter or a sequel or something, and that became Future Man. And then Steven Spielberg went on and did Ready Player One, right? So,
right, yeah.
But here you are,
here I am. It's interesting how, you know, The Last Starfighter, that kind of leads into some other shows. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with the sequel. I mean, they've been teasing it for a couple of years now. But the great thing about it is Jonathan Betchell, the original writer, is a part of it. He's writing. As far as I know, the director is a part of it. And they want to, it's called, well, who knows what it will be called. That's Nick Castle, obviously. But it's sort of like the next generation. And they have said that Lance and I will be involved sort of as the parents somehow. So I feel like all the original people that are involved will give it a sense of integrity, I think.
Yeah.
You know, they're hopefully, I'm sure it'll be much more, you know, CGI, obviously, much more sophisticated CGI, and probably a lot more action packed, but I don't know. You know, I think the trailer park's going to be in there, and
it's got to be,
which is good, right?
It's got to be.
You've got to have some, you know, real characters that the audience can kind of spring from, to give it that sense of that something you can relate to on some level.
Yeah. Well, I think in this day and age, it's more relevant than ever. You know, I showed it to my now, well, he'll be 7 next week, but my 5-year-old at the time, and he absolutely loved it. The face melting scene terrified him, but
that's a bit creepy.
I saw that in the theater as a kid, scared the hell out of me, but loved it though, you know.
And there's obviously
that's pretty creepy.
It is pretty creepy. And there's a few scenes in that movie where he's like, you know, like the kissing scene. Well, actually, no joke. So my wife and I, whenever we kiss, he goes, "Oh, diarrhea!" Like every time now, hands down. So
Classic.
to the point where he made a card for us and for our anniversary, and he's like, "You can diarrhea, it's okay."
Oh, it's very, very sweet.
So there you
That's
go.
funny. Yeah.
Catherine, it was a pleasure to have you on our show. And I can't thank you enough for taking your time. You're out of your busy schedule. And just thank you for
It has been busy, but no, I enjoy it. And I'm
thank
glad
you.
to be busy too. I mean, I feel very grateful to be busy. So, and I'm happy to do this.
Thank you.
And it was definitely an honor getting a chance to talk to you. This was absolutely incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Corey and Zach. It was fun, and give your wives a diarrhea for me.
Will do.
I mean, that couldn't have been a better way. So you go watch Phantom of the Paradise. Don't watch Jason X, and we'll go diarrhea. That's terrible.
Don't
I'm sorry.
go crazy with the diarrhea now.
You may die.
Catherine, thank you so much again. And
all right.
we look forward to seeing you in person down the road.
Yeah, hopefully. I hope so.
Yeah,
all right.
for sure.
Well, have a great Sunday, you guys.
Thank you. Put your toes in the sand for us, okay?
Will do.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Podcasting After Dark's exclusive interview series with Catherine Mary Stewart. And, as always, thank you for your support.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human, something always watching, something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.